And welcome to 0 to 60 episode 3, where three bearded blokes from Manchester talk absolute nonsense about Fab and ruin your evening for about an hour. So, I'm very kindly joined by my usual guests, or co-hosts. I should probably give them a bit more credit.
I wouldn't.
As much as one of them's currently scoffing a big plate of chips. Mr. Holden, how are you, dear boy? He's still in stitches.
I love that intro. It makes it sound like he's the one eating chips. It's great.
Oh, I'm dying. Hello, everyone.
And George, how are you doing, dear boy?
I'm good, and totally not the one eating chips. Yeah, I am.
Absolutely not. Well, because we're all shit at flesh and blood, we decided to get someone who's actually demonstrated a degree of finesse and class. And we've got a ProQuest winner with us in Mr. Liam Canning. Hello, dear boy.
Hello. I don't know about finesse and class, but I certainly have acquired a Pro Tour invitation.
Well, you did play Prism, so we can take a little bit of shine off it.
Exactly.
How is everyone's evening, gents?
Better now chips have arrived.
Better with chips. I mean, I'm staring at a pizza, but I'll refrain while I can as much as before Liam decides to destroy my pizza.
I'm dying, but we're all good.
You've been dying all day, mate.
So I think there was maybe two main things we want to discuss today. One is the ProQuest season continues. Three of us have been abject. One of us more so than others. And obviously Liam is the shining star of Manchester, not you, Holden.
Of course.
So I guess, Liam, do you want to give a quick overview, Mr. Holden?
An overview of ProQuest so far?
I think so.
I mean, we've only done one ProQuest since we last did our podcast, right? Or have we done more than that?
No. Three.
Three? Yeah. They've been that long?
It was only after the first weekend that we did our last one.
So we did LR, York, and Bash.
You'd have indeed.
That sounds right.
God. Man,
you've been busy.
Time flies when you're having fun, right? When you're constantly just failing. But anyway, I think I think I just echo what I talked about in the previous episode, that I think it's been a lot of fun, good experience. The meta's not changed much apart from more prisms showing up. Obviously, I top-8'd York and lost to the eventual winner, which is sour but fair. Bash was Mr. Liam's shining moment, and LR was just an absolute write-off. I'm not even talking about LR.
I mean,
not from my perspective, anyway.
I think before you talk about LR being a write-off, I think I can do my 2-minute spiel. After a reasonably decent outing, not played competitively for a while, went 2-4 at EH, and then came Living Realms. Really good first game, just lost out to a Katsu, and then proceeded 2 games against OG Bravo, in which I was crippling crushed with Dominate 6 times. I was Terror Sundered twice. I was dominated, crippling crushed twice. And I lost the will to live and dropped, which was how tilted I was. George was the star of the show rather than Starvo, in actually stopping me from just driving home and leaving everyone I'd driven up behind.
Purely selfish, just to be fair, considering I was in your car.
Yeah, that's true. It was self-preservation rather than being stuck in Yorkshire. But the less said about my experience, the better. George, how about you before we go on to someone who's actually done very well the last couple of weeks?
Me, I've done terribly last couple of weeks. My high point turned out to be week 1. After making 2 top 8s week 1, I've now consistently failed in the next 3. So, I had a reasonable time at Living Realms. I'm not even going to talk about Bash. Lovely event, great, and everything else. But goodness me, I had a torrid time. I think it was a step too far on that one. I was knackered and just failed miserably. But yeah, I mean, Bash, I did all right. I won the first 3, and then spoilers, tanked it after that. So after a really close game against an undefeated Dash player at the time, putting you to shame, Brooke. Sorry.
I mean,
And-
I've never progressed to have any talent in this game. I just talk about it.
Well, you do that. You do that very well. So it's all good. But um, I lost to a Dash player in a really close game, and then proceeded to have just about the worst draw I've ever had as a Ranger in the final game. I'm not sure it would have swung the game if I had a decent one, because I played in a match against John Ho, which was very close, but it wasn't very close, but could have been very close if I had a decent game. Yeah, he played well, but I just had a torrid time
I
and
think
was then knocked out.
I think it's a nice point there to shout out the stores so far, because I think every event I've been to has been very well put on. And I'm sure the last ProQuest that I think we're managing to make, which is Fanboy 3, our local scene, our home den, will be equally good. Mr. Canning.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure on you there.
No, yeah.
But then again, you have already run a ProQuest, so tell us what it was like. Let us live in your shared glory for just a few moments.
Mate, that burglar is glorious.
That looked really good. Yeah. Okay. Well, before I talk about that, because I feel I'll leave that until the end. I'll talk about my LR experience as well, because I too played in Living Realms, and I too. Actually, that's not true. I played Kano because
You did.
I did. And I was a win away from top 8, actually, which is bittersweet, but I was this close to becoming the first Kano in Europe to top 8 one of the ProQuest.
Was it Kano not top 8 in Europe?
No, I don't believe
Wow.
so. I could be wrong, but as far as we know, because usually if there would be, people would be like, "Oh my god, Kano!" like they did with the American top 8. But yeah, so that was fun. I basically just copied Charlie for after the first round. So I played. I went 4-2. It was a 63 player event, so
Yeah,
62.
62.
Yeah, so 4-2 didn't guarantee you in the top 8 if you lost your last round. Only one person on, I think. So, unfortunate, but how it goes.
I think that's the
Games were
point.
fun,
Shout
yeah.
out to Charlie as well. I mean, a local
Absolutely.
Kano player taking to his first major event for Fab,
Yeah.
and absolutely, just schooling people with no null runes. So just
Even shouted out by DMM Marder's disgusting wizard things.
Oh, yeah.
he certainly punished people for their wardrobe choices. So
Make sure you pack your
Yeah.
null room, boys and girls.
Well, that's not what we're here for, is it? Really,
It's not.
we're here to talk about me winning, which, for better or worse, happened. Better for me, worse for my opponents. So, for some context about the kind of field, we didn't have a lot of prisms in Board and Swords. There was me, there was Matt Folks, and there was like 2 others.
Yeah, if it's 4 or 5 prisms, right?
Yeah. So this was, I think, because we were fairly north, we tend to have a lot more Starvo players. A lot of the Prism players kind of resided in the south. I've been playing Prism since I started. That was like the first deck. So I've been the villain since the beginning.
First of many decks, I think it's worth adding.
This is true.
we forgive you for being a prison player as well. So.
Yeah, I try not to play Prism if I can help it.
I mean, that's not technically true. You're at least known locally for not playing anything if there's a mirror available.
Exactly. That doesn't mean that's why I never play Prism, because there's always a Prism player.
That is true.
It's like the fact that there's potentially Kano mirrors. It's just, that's out the window. That's not happening. So, but yeah. So, I believe I went 4-2 at this ProQuest as well, but it was more of a this one was smaller, so didn't have much of an issue with getting in, especially because I lost the last round again to a Starvo, but I lost to a Starvo and a Viserai, not a Viserai, a Prism. Matthew Folk, actually. Shout out to that cheeky bugger.
Sorry, Liam. My
It's fine.
terrible
I'm
co-host is
just-
giggling at the fact I'm eating a chicken stripper on
No,
mute.
to be honest, I wasn't giggling at that at
I
all.
was laughing at like George is like not muting and just cracking his can open during while Liam's speaking, and all I can do is
Yeah,
That's a
sorry
full-
about the background noise, but it's.
Oh,
Well,
I
this
thought
is-
I was
this is-
coming on a podcast of professionals.
imagine.
Oh no!
I mean,
Oh,
you
no.
were massively wrong on that one, weren't you? Let's be honest.
Well, I think this is testament to Liam's character, in that in spite of you two giggling like small children, he ploughed on like a pro. He just comes on the guest and he's showing us up. We're terrible humans. Liam,
There's a
show
reason
us
you
up.
won a ProQuest.
Yeah.
Oh right, yes, back to me. Right. Yeah, so I guess like first I played I played 2 Viserais, Prism, 2 Starvos, and a normal Bravo, which is basically to buy. So, I basically just got a free win, which is great. But first round was like a fairly someone who'd never played against Prism before, which is always a great start because you just generally know that they once they realize they should probably attack your auras, it's generally too late. So it was nice to kind of start off because usually I tend to fuck up the first round, and then that kind of all goes downhill from there. But especially in the way that the kind of Flesh and Blood has got their tiebreakers, it's like first round losses are quite bad. I mean, that's the case in most competitive card games, though. So I guess that's not necessarily a Fab specific thing. But so after that, I played Matt Folks round 2. Never played the Prism. I played like the Prism era once before in this scenario outside of since the new cards have come out, and that was in my previous top 8 at Underworld Games. And that didn't go great, so I was a bit worried. But it wasn't too bad. But the cards did not come in my favor, so I lost that one. But then I think I played the Bravo. A friend of mine, David Calf. That was another buy. It's like just chilling. Game's not particularly hard. It's like they basically tech their deck to beat Prism as much as they could, and even then it's like you just play so many auras now that even the matchup was hard enough as it was. Now it's like basically not feasible for them to really keep up with what you're doing. So you kind of just bury them in this large amount of cardboard that's stuck on your board, and anytime they give you any semblance of breathing room, you just hit them with 16 Kadachis. So
Well, it's worse than that now because it's with shimmers, so it's like Kadachi
this
3.
is true. And also, if you want to play a Herald, any of your Heralds just aren't Phantasm and they attack for 9, or your blues are now reds, and don't even get me started on like Fractal. Oh, not Fractal. The 1 mana, the ones, the
Miraging Metamorph, yeah.
I think I'd know the names of the cards I played, but no. No. But yeah, so after that, I played another Viserai. This one was kind of worrying for me because Viserai, I think, is one of the harder matches to Prism when played well. And when Viserai's deck lines up with well, it can be quite hard to deal with the split damage as well as the kind of like constant go again they can get off of Marbury Skies. My opponent had Marbury Skies 6 turns in a row, which is quite hard to deal with. But I think generally that the things that they were throwing at me were weak enough, and I had like a game plan for it. So generally, like the game plan for Viserai for me is just that you build. I went first and I got like 2 hours, which was a good start, and then after that you kind of just like try and retain a fine enough board state early, and then after that you just kind of like tank them out of their resources once they run out of Marbury Skies. Once they have an off turn, that's when you start to snowball again. You don't take damage to present a threat. You just wait for them to kind of present weakness, and then you kind of capitalize on that because your deck's able to play a very good defensive game against them with all the blues and the null rune. Also, like Phantasmal Footsteps are really good at blocking all of their break points because a lot of the attacks that they have are 4, and sometimes they have to break the chain with their non-attack actions if they want to kind of get any semblance of like a strong attack in. So there are times when you get to use it twice. Generally, you just use it once, but it means that you have. It's nice to be able to pitch it for 1 and still have the 2 floating or the 1 floating from like any yellow attack that you can then go into in your second cycle, which is kind of what you're going for. You don't always get to your second cycle because you'll either just start snowballing too quickly and they can't deal with you, or you die. So
the classic Sonata after a Skeletor break is kind of just the turn you just have to accept.
yeah.
Go ALS or you don't.
And then after that, I play against 2 Starvos, which is kind of what I was waiting for. My deck was more or less teched mainly for kind of Starvo, in that I was playing 3 unmovable reds, and which is basically the only tech that Prism ever plays, really, because the deck's so synergistic that you barely play many cards for many matchups. You play like your small amount of defense reacts, and sometimes you play, generally for the mirror, actually you play like the spicy tech, but like Raging Onslaught or anything of that kind of regard.
Yellow Raging Onslaught for 6.
Spicy tech.
Oh, huge attack. It's 6. That's so much. Yeah, that was, you just that matchup it can go either way. It depends on how aggressive they are. Like my last round opponent was a lot more of an aggressive version of Starvo, definitely more of the kind of Captain Planet. And they hit more with theirs, and they also were playing some of the more kind of like generically strong attacks like Snow Under and the like. So that even when they didn't hit, they were still presenting a decent amount of pressure. And I think at that time I wasn't. My deck wasn't really playing as I would like. It was kind of like things were folding. Not that you were getting, all red hands, and you're getting some hands that have all blues, no yellows, or like all 2 blocks, and then they hit the Starvo and stuff like that, which it can happen. But I didn't mind too much because I was already in a top 8 at that point. However, I was cognizant of the fact that I would be going second for most of the rounds, outside of the finals, luckily for me. But that's a bit far into the future. So, but all 3 of the top 8 matches for me were Starvo, which was fine for me. But I think that generally some of the most important thing about the matchup, in my opinion, is the play or first or second is quite relevant, in that generally going first as Prism gives you so much of the kind of tempo in the matchup that you're allowed to play more aggressively and not feel like you are on the back foot from the beginning, especially if you manage to put 2 auras down. That's when you kind of like really know that you're comfortable, and they have to start dealing with you rather than you having to kind of like turtle up a bit. That can especially be the case if they manage to hit Starvo on their first turn, and also the fact that like their deck is so well designed to have like an Arsenal card that when they go first, they basically just get like they're more or less 80% ish to hit on their next turn, especially because they can just shock Chalmers the other cards in their hand to kind of set themselves up, pick the cards they want to keep. So they kind of set themselves up. I don't know if it's necessarily 80. I think is it around there, Liam? You have the stats for the Starvo deck generally.
You're on mute there, Liam.
Yeah. I've got it. Definitely. I definitely know what I'm doing. I think it
such a
depends
pro.
on how many elements, right? So like I think the most aggressive version is like 17, 17, 17, which is designed to do 60. I think it's have 60 between 60 and 64% after a crown, and then if you hold impulse, it's close to 80.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So just over like 50% generally. So luckily, my quarterfinals opponent was playing a more like defensive Starvo deck that was mainly like second cycle Starvo activations and all of the like, Terra Senders and stuff. But their plan was to try and fatigue me, like out my auras, which I was kind of worried about to start because I had sideboarded as if I was playing against an aggressive Starvo, so I had more defense reaction in my deck. Unless I wasn't playing like Prismatic Shield. I only played Prismatic Shield when I was first, because it isn't great when you're blocking, but it's great when you're being proactive. So I kind of had a lot less threats in my deck, but I managed to get to a state where I was able to kind of. He exposed my footsteps at one point as well, which was very bad for me because that basically meant I was kind of cobbling together as much like crap as I was able to kind of throw it in. But we essentially got to a point where I managed to establish enough of a board state, and they weren't able to do like 2 action points in a turn, and then I managed to kind of get to a point where they blocked with their hand, and then I was able to hit. I think it was an Air Edition when they couldn't block it, and
It was, yeah.
yeah, so I managed to get over the line there. I think that was like the worst matchup for me of all 3 of them. That was probably the one I was the most worried about losing. Then I played the semi-finals against Matt Light, who was on Starvo at the time. That match felt kind of comfortable. I think one of the biggest issues for Matt in that game was that he was playing Stalagmite rather than Rampart, which I think is like it makes sense in theory because it can potentially ruin my whole turn of attacks for 1 turn or maybe 2. But then outside of that, I think it generally tends to bleed more damage overall, especially over the course of a longer game. So I think that kind of ended up being the case. And then it got to a point where he couldn't deal with all my auras, and I think I had like 4. At some point, I had 2. Like he just ignored my auras and started attacking me. I don't think it's fair at some point, especially when you have things like haze bending on the board, because then it really punishes you for attacking auras, because then you just come back with them with the same amount of damage, but they've just kind of turned one bad aura into a kind of lesser bad aura, but still it's like a spectral shield, which is great for you. So I won that one, and then I went into finals, and that was probably like the most relaxing finals I'll ever be in my life. Like getting to go first, getting to play an aura, and then I just got to kind of chill, play some auras, hit him with my auras, hit him with my heralds that were coming in for 9, and then I won. So it was great. I loved it.
And you got, what was your gold foil again?
My gold foil was Anaphos.
Just for all those all for those bravos you've been farming on the way.
It's really ironic that the 2 Anaphos that we've gotten in the UK so far were won by 2 prison players. So
literally claiming it off the cold, dead hands of OG Starvo. I mean, to be fair, I've got absolutely no sympathy for them after what they did to me on at Living Realms. So cry away. So, I mean, that kind of, like I say, we've got this weekend. I can't remember if there's any after that.
Yeah, there's 2 in Scotland, one Saturday, one Sunday.
I think this is the final weekend of Progress season.
So, I mean, obviously, we've done quite a few between us now, sort of different stores. What's been your overall takeaways from how they've actually panned out? Not just in terms of, obviously, individual results, but as an actual season, how the meta's developed, changed, and potentially plateaued recently and stagnated slightly, without giving away my opinion.
I don't think there's been any surprises, right? Like Starvo came hot out of the gates after being played in, is it SG Con in America, Philadelphia?
Yeah,
and then every Tom, Dick, and Harry, including myself, decided let's all jump on the aggro deck, because aggro tends to be really good at the start of seasons. And then as it gradually went on, all the prison players decided to come out with the broken deck and start taking wins off everyone.
I think that was the only surprise for me, honestly, was that that Starvo was a thing so quickly. I think when we first saw Riverfest, I thought it would take a while for somebody to crack Starvo, really. I was surprised to see it as consistent as it was. By the time the ProQuest season came around, I really thought it would be Prism out the gates. I mean, I think now Prism's just the best deck, but I think, I was surprised to see Starvo be as good as it was as quickly as it was.
Liam, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. When I first saw Starvo, I thought it was a bad hero. I thought it was like a meme.
I told you all.
Whoa.
Except me. Okay, me and George told you all.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think it was like one of those heroes that obviously when they created it, I get the feeling that I was kind of just like, oh, this is going to be something that's really hard to pull off, but when it is, it'll be really cool, and it's thematic, like it's a wow, big attack, and then I kind of forgot that
Pulses exist.
how hard how easy it is when you have access to like filtering, and you can also just like you draw 4 cards every turn. That helps a lot, I think.
It's almost 5 with Starvo with
Yeah,
Crown.
absolutely. So I think that was like potentially an oversight and possibly something that they may not have tested enough, because they looked at it as like something from a supplementary set as the only adult hero and went, this will be fun, and then just kind of throw it out there. And like didn't expect it to be played. When you tack on Guardian to something that's doing something powerful like that, and you give them access to that card pool as well, you have something that's always going to potentially be a problem eventually. And it just so happened that this one eventually was immediately. So,
I mean, I spoke to the boffins at 0 to 60 HQ and looked into the stats. I mean, the fact that by the end of week 2, I mean, it's obviously just me sat there with nothing better to do. By the end of week 2, considering he's only had 1 season, he'd managed to accumulate 336 living legend points, overtaking Katsu. Kind of shows his popularity and how, I think, broken he actually is.
yeah, I don't actually know how much living legend points, or how many living legend points you get for ProQuest as opposed to callings and anything of that regard. But I don't imagine it's nearly as much as you would for those events. The fact that it's managed to kind of overtake a character that's was one of the more prolific ones in the first kind of 2 years of the game.
Yeah, I mean, each hero gets 6 points for a ProQuest. National champs are 20. It scales up to world champs, which are 300. So it kind of shows me, one is obviously there's been a lot of events, right? But like I said, in speaking to the data team that we have accumulated here,
this guy.
every single hero that's been at this level of success has had some sort of a nerf. And obviously we're due in, I think it's the 6th of April, is the next banned and restricted, in that Katsu was that high, and then they banned Seeds of Agony, Drone, to stop the recursion. Then obviously, then it was Chain, then you got Seeds, then it was Briar / Lexi, and they banned Ball Lightning.
Yeah, she was too powerful. That was all it was.
Ball Lightning.
They saw all the results in Manchester and just went, oof.
You ruined it for yourself, George. And then obviously we now got Starvo at that similar level. Can the figures show that that's where he's up to? So I wouldn't be surprised.
What is the solution though? That's the thing.
I mean, that's a interesting question.
I've heard Oakenold and Awakening to holding specializations. I've heard just straight up ban the hero. Like, where do you draw the line?
I think it'd be a mistake to ban it. I think the outrage after they had with something like the Duskblade before it even got released, then Starvo, and to have, they've already had the testing quality question before, and hopefully the 2.0 stuff's going to kind of address some of that and what they're saying. But I mean, personally, I'm really unsure. I'd prefer if they just made Oakenold's specializations for Oldhim. I always thought it was when I first saw the card. It took me a while to. It wasn't. When you see the artwork, it looks like a specialization.
The trouble is just doing something like that. Does that not solve? It doesn't really address what I think is going to be the bigger problem of that. He's just going to have access to all the elemental cards they're going to print in the future.
It just causes problems for design space, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
Like every lightning card that wants to be fit into like a Briar or Lexi deck, then Bravo gets it regardless. And every Guardian card that gets printed for Bravo, Starvo gets it regardless. So like the pool just gets too big.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you, George, Liam? What do you guys think?
I mean, I guess there's lots of different ways. Honestly, the ideal way for me would be to ban him. I think it would outrage people, and rightly so. I'm sure a lot of people have spent a lot of money on that lovely double-sided cold foil But
It is very pretty.
I just don't know how you fix it without having with the card pool that he's got the size of. I mean, maybe you could do something with restricting the number of elements that he can have in a deck. Give him some sort of deck building restriction. Maybe that could work. I don't know. I've heard lots of other good ideas, but
Another idea that I did here was restrict it. So, like, you can't do it turn 1, and you can't do it back-to-back turns.
oh yeah, I've heard someone say that about maybe putting a counter on Starvo, and then you have to remove it the next time it triggers, right? And then
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that definitely like removes the biggest problem with it is not necessarily when he hits, it's that when he hits and then keeps hitting and then you aren't able to actually like regain any sort of a kind of board state for yourself or any sort of tempo. As by then he's done so much damage to you that he just takes what you've done and then does it again and again. So it just kind of repeats.
I think that is the biggest problem.
And I think that also stems with the problem with the keywords that they gave to his ability. And I understand that they were trying to give him all the elements to kind of make it have that, feel of him having like the thematic kind of lore based, he has all the elements and he's going to do them all at once. But when you tack on the 2 strongest kind of keywords in Fab onto an ability, it does create somewhat of an issue balance-wise when you also give him the biggest card pool in the game. Tacked on with like the strongest attacks in the game in Guardian. So I think it is definitely something that I think, as you mentioned, James, the problem with testing, but I think that's something that generally happens with small testing groups anyway, like even big games as big as Magic, they have things that fall through the cracks, and it's something that like even a testing team, that if it's just a small team comprised of 6 to 10 people, they'll have their own kind of meta that they kind of see and no one else, and that's kind of how they derive all their games and their understandings of it. Then you give that to hundreds and hundreds of people, and then they make something else of it, and then they turn it into this monstrosity that we have before us now. I think what I would like to see, if I was to change anything for Starvo, it would have to be some sort of an errata if they weren't to ban it, similar to what they did to Briar. But then you ask the question of really how far they can go with that, because just of the general issues with it's from the newest set that's just come out, and it's a Majestic. So it's something that like would really disenfranchise newer players that are getting into it, and they pull this cool card that like, and then they play it and it's like, oh no, it's different now. It doesn't do that. Briar necessarily isn't too bad in the sense that the errata kind of doesn't change how the cards work. It's just that it changed kind of how much it affects the game, the amount of times you do it. So, but I don't know if you can necessarily do that with Starvo.
I mean, at least if they ban Starvo, right, all the cards that go into a Starvo deck aren't redundant because they're played in every other deck. Whereas, like, the only people that aren't going to be happy is the people that have got the cold foil.
Yeah, and I think, but it's going to be a big feel. But it's like, I know people who cracked open like the cold foil dust blade, right? And it's like, great, I've just opened the cold foil M I can never actually play. Obviously, then you could actually play in place, but regardless, I mean, I always like George's suggestion that maybe it blanks the card text, so at least you're getting hit for big damage, almost like brute style. But then, if you choose not to block it, or you can't block it because it's dominated, you can at least swing back. It's the idea that I will get hit, I will then lose 2 cards out. If I don't block anything, I get hit for potentially 14. I've also got Captain Planet Pulverized, which was another wonderful moment, which I never want to repeat again. But you then only got 2 cards. And the amount of decks that can actually deal with doing something really strong off a 2-card hand, potentially in Arsenal, is really quite low. So you can never get the tempo back once that's gone.
I think this is just the thing, is more than anything else, we say obviously it'd be negative, like for early player experience, whatever, to have a card banned or errated, but I think it's worse to have this hero that basically leads to such uninteractive gameplay, where you don't get to take a turn because your hand's been discarded or put to the bottom of your deck at random, and you just have to maybe play one card and pass, or do nothing and pass. So I think that's potentially worse than having a card that somebody could pull in a set that at some point will be out of print, that that would be useless or wouldn't be the same as the card text is.
Yeah, I mean, I think they will do something. It's just what they do. I think there's a lot of options, and a lot of times people come up with really good suggestions, and then LSS do something different. So hopefully they manage to come up with a solution that fits. But obviously, once ProQuest season ends, you can't play Starvo anyway, because we're actually moving into the whole Blitz skirmish, battle hardened nonsense, which is quite an interesting one because we don't really play Blitz in Manchester.
And here's hoping we never ever see a young Starvo, because that would just be, that'd be horrible.
I think, yeah, I'm glad the double side thing was just full art and not a young version. But I mean, what's your guys' opinions on Blitz? I know, like I say, it's not something we pick up often. Also opens up, really broken decks like Data Doll. Obviously, more like you're looking at your KOs and getting completely blown out, turn ones, and Benji OTKs and Kasai swinging sabers, and actually using cash in as a real thing, which personally I'm all for. But what do you guys think of Blitzing as a game mode?
I mean, I hate Blitz. Everyone knows this. Just because of the high roll aspect to it, the whole, like, I can sit down, opponent flips over, hero, goes first, high rolls, kills me, and then I walk away sad.
Is that literally in reference to KO, literally high rolling?
I mean, there's more than one deck that can OTK, right? Like, KO, Kano, Rhinar in some aspects, Benji now. I think it's just, like, just sitting down and then not being able to play a game and lose is just fundamentally bad. But I know that Blitz is really good for getting new players into the game and stuff like that, so maybe I just need to start playing it a little bit more and change my opinion on it, because I'm going to be playing the Battle Hardened anyway. What about you, George?
Yeah, I mean, somewhat similar. I'm not a big fan of some of the Blitz-only heroes, some of the young ones particularly, and the games do feel swingier, but I mean, I've enjoyed it. It's sometimes nice to just be able to crack, do a game in 20 minutes rather than 50. Not that any of my games go to 50 minutes actually, but yeah, it's nice to have that as an alternate format. I'm not over the moon that the calling in Europe is going to be a Blitz calling, but yeah, quite happy to play it every now and then, particularly if it helps bring new players into the game.
Liam?
I am personally quite pro Blitz recently.
Ooh.
This is coming from someone who's only played one tournament of Blitz. But I do think that it is nice that we are getting that kind of Blitz straight after a ProQuest season of Classic Constructed, primarily due to it's just a nice kind of like fresh kind of perspective on the game that you can like delve into and not feel like you're looking at the same heroes again, especially because the best heroes in Blitz are definitely not even close to the kind of same heroes that you play in CC, in that you have a lot more ninja, warrior, even brute, wizard. Just the fact that you have a whole different plethora of cards, it kind of feels like a different game in some aspect, especially in the way that the tempo of the games go. Like you mentioned, it's much faster. The games are decided much quicker. But I do think that also has its own kind of semblance of skill in it, in how your decks are built to play or combat that. But I also think that Blitz has its own issues, especially with the existence of like fatigue strategies, particularly Ultim. I've spoken to some people that play a lot of Blitz, and like Ultim, realistically, if there was the time limits weren't necessarily a problem, Ultim would probably be like in CC at some point. It's very prevalent and very hard to deal with, especially for most classes in the game. It's possible that this is maybe not the case now with Everfest, as you've got a lot of more power in some of the specific young heroes, like Kasaya, like you mentioned. But I think it'll be nice. It'll be refreshing. I'm excited to play some. I want to play some new heroes. I want to play some Benji. I want to play some Kano. I'll slam some Kano in there. Actually get to play Kano when he's good. It'll be great. But it'll be nice, I think. And it also is something that's just like, it's just nice to have like a nice refreshing change of pace to the game.
I think that's what I'm looking forward to, is that kind of just, because it feels a little bit more casual, because like I say, you're almost expecting to get blown out turn 1 or 2. If a game, I don't think I've ever had a Blitz game go longer than about 10 minutes. Because usually I ended up still playing Dory Dawnblade. Didn't really have any Iras playing a million flick-flacks. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I feel for anyone who tries to play Genis, who is obviously viable.
They signed up for that. That's their problem.
They've got their silver palms.
It's like playing Ranger in CC.
Yeah. And then, people. But it's nice to see a different list of heroes. You might see a Shiana, that sort of thing. Where I'm not saying it's going to be good, but I think there's a change of pace. I don't think I'm particularly upset about it, and it kind of leads into the latest announcement or at least spoiler about the next product, which is coming out in April, which is the new battle decks. I can't remember the exact wording that they used, like the classic combat decks. Because I mean, obviously, Liam, with your involvement at Fanboy, do you see something like this actually being picked up? Or
Absolutely. I was going to mention how good this is for me being able to retain and get new players into the game. But one of the biggest issues is that the Blitz decks that we currently have available for people don't necessarily give you a great idea of how to play the game. They're not bad. They're some of the best supplementary products that we've had for card games to learn. But one of the issues is that generally they don't feel like they don't have. It's nice that they have equipment now, but you have it's something that I wouldn't personally sit down and teach someone to play with. You have the IRA decks that were originally kind of like their starting into the game, but that doesn't even have equipment, so you can't really teach everyone. You're like, oh, this is how the game plays, but there's also this new different thing that you've not dealt with that's also a part of the game, but we'll get into that later. I think it's very nice. It's nice that they gave you kind of like a nice little thing for older players as well, and that the heroes are cold foil, so it gives you something like that. And also, like, I think the most important thing is the mats. The mats are really good because they teach you the game and like kind of how the game looks a lot better than a lot of other games. Having like those areas that tell you about the arsenal and the equipment slots and your weapon slots, because just having all that visually there in front of you helps to kind of give you an idea of kind of what you're meant to be doing with yourself, essentially.
Yeah, because I think it's the first one's going to be, well, I'll say first one. The one that's announced is Rhino versus Dorinthia. 240 card decks, obviously they are going to be Blitz. Cold Foil Hero, Cold Foil Weapon, Rainbow Foil Equipment. So it'd be interesting what equipment they actually put in these starter decks. I know, listening to a couple of other podcasts and people talking, are they actually going to make these competitive decks? Are you going to see a Courageous Blade Hold? Are they going to put M's in?
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to say. I'd love to see them just up the quality of cards in the deck. I mean, the current ones I think they have rares at the most, and even then, only a couple of copies. If maybe even one. I think I can't remember. I haven't bought any myself, but I think that shows why, because there's not really anything to gain from them apart from one full art card of a hero.
The general kind of Blitz kind of structure of the deck tends to be, I believe, it's like 2 or 3 rares, with one of them being the specialization, and then you get the mentor card, which are like for the Monarch heroes.
That was only for Monarch.
Yeah, because I mean, with
the
TOA, you didn't even get the specs, did you? It's because they were M's, obviously. Which just seems ludicrous that they didn't include those.
It feels like I liked the idea of mentors as something you can only get in this particular product. It at least made it as a someone who's got most of the cards isn't going to get anything out of this deck, at least a reason to go and get it. So I think that's that. I'll probably get it as I've said before, I love lore. I love the story of Flesh and Blood. I love the world of Wraith. So to get an illustrated lore booklet.
I mean, plus you're a bit of a Dorinthia fan. I mean,
a little bit, yeah. I mean,
Some have said.
so I've heard.
It has been noted that I have been a bit of a Dorinthia main, verging on shill at times. But I've got all the Dorinthia cards, so I'm not going to get much out of the deck. But I'm looking forward to that, and see what the maps look like. So, and hopefully, like I say, to get something that is helpful to new players. Because I never played Magic. Didn't Magic do decks where to get new players into it? Actually, you didn't shuffle the decks. It told you how to play the first couple of turns.
I'm not particularly. I don't know about that specifically. The star decks I remember they were free, and they would give you like 20 cards, or 20 cards of one color that you knew, and then it would randomly give you another color, and that would be the colors you start with, and then you'd put lands in, and then that would be like a 60 card deck, or it was like a 40 card deck, and that had like one rare of each color in it, and then the rest was kind of just like some other chaff. They weren't great, but they let you play the game. But I think like the way that Flesh and Blood ones at least have been is that they at least have like unique cards, or cards that are quite like at least playable and quite good. I think that's one of the best things about Flesh and Blood, is that like the commons are like the kind of the linchpins of decks, and you tend to not have to only run rares like a lot of other card games, and like a lot of the power of your deck is actually just in the cards that you get in just from opening like a box or two. You get like 70-80% of your deck just from that, which I think is like one of the best things about it, and that it's quite affordable to just start off realistically, even if you're not doing it in the most competitive way. At least now, especially with Everfest, having access to playable equipment in Majestic means that like people at least can upgrade their Blitz decks now, and these new Blitz decks that are coming out, if they don't give us like the proper equipment that we'd like, at least there's like a kind of faster way to get semi-competitive.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think that'll be good about them. And like I say, we just need to get new players into the game. And I'd love to see them print some actual proper M's. Maybe I've heard a few people mention if they put in the Reinhard deck, they put CNC. In the Dory deck, they then put in a Lightning Strike.
To be honest, considering they're out of print, I'd love to see him print non-foil L's, just to put like a scab skin non-foil in there. I don't think that would be unreasonable. Okay, sure, it would drop the value of people's current cards, but I mean, I don't see that being a bad thing for the player base. These sets are out of print now anyway. We don't know what their reprint plans are, but one nice way to be able to get hold of it would just be able to pick up a guaranteed set of these very essential basic L's.
Yeah, because like I said, it's not going to get reprinted. Again, let's talk this again, still in the Magic terminology, like a Chronicles set. What Fab 2.0 is going to look like when we hear about that, hopefully later this month. I think hopefully by the time we do the next podcast, they'll have said what that is. But we've got quite a few new products coming up, and I'm hoping that some of that is going to address the secondary market and people who feel that they can't compete, even though they've not got CNC, even though I don't think it's as prevalent these days in terms of people actually running it. It's still there, and it's always going to be a good card, but I think giving people access to that in an affordable way, rather than it's about 80 quid a card at the moment.
It's down at 60, I think.
It's dropped a bit.
But still, 180 quid for a play set of 3, which you shuffle into your deck, really doesn't feel good.
No, like you say, now particularly given that it's actually a card that isn't necessarily played by all heroes, it's not even good into the meta right now with Crown being so heavily played. We could really just do with some of these reprints. So if they were available in starter decks, and that was just a way to pick them up, that'd be great, and it would mean it would give people a start at least, or even if it's just something to trade for them, or the established players can pick a copy up. It'd just be nice to have some incentive to buy them.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be good to see if there was older players who just wanted to get that. Just give the deck to a new player. Then afterwards, you don't really need the commons, the rares. Take the cold foils or whatever, and players can then pick up the rest. Because I think look at or think how I don't know how much bulk you've donated, Liam, but I know there's been rather a lot of it. So,
I mean, I did that. I did it yesterday. I got my whole dash bulk and just gave it to Ollie.
Yeah,
literally a full deck box of it.
But that's always, I think that's always what I've liked about the community, that especially the one we've got in Manchester, is I think everyone's very open. I think everyone is really encouraging. I think people share a lot of ideas.
There's no caginess.
Yeah, I really like that about how I think we are, and how we discuss things, and we've got our Discord. So, yeah, I just hope that the new products do kick in, because we've got another 2 in May as well, before our only draft set of the year, which
very long awaited draft set. I think it's going to be by the time. So,
I mean, what would you guys, especially ProQuest winner Liam, as our expert in the room, what do you guys actually want to see from this June set? Like, what would make you more excited for it, if they were to sort of give a few tidbits of information?
I mean, I guess I'll go first on this one. Why not? I mean, we'll leave Liam's expert opinion till after I've rambled. So, I to be honest, I would just really like to see a little bit of a shake up for the other classes, just to change what's competitive right now. The meta, to me at least, didn't feel like it should. I mean, obviously, Starvo being new and very competitive is something, but it feels like we're still playing with the same 3 classes that everyone was playing with before Everfest. And obviously being Runeblade, Illusionist, Guardian, and I just want to see something change for a bit. Whether that be we see a new ninja that changes things, or a new, pretty much of any class. I'd just like to see something a bit different, change the meta. So I think that would be the biggest thing I'd like to see from a new draft set, and hopefully that'll come, because I would hope that I really want to see a set without a Runeblade. Actually, I think that might be the biggest thing yet.
Yeah,
like a set since Welcome to Wraith without a Runeblade in it would be amazing.
The level of nodding heads at the moment, looking at the videos here, is astronomical. Just
Flesh no Runeblade, right?
Yeah, no Runeblades in this next set, please.
Yeah, that would be absolutely spectacular. It really would. But apart from that, to be honest, I don't know what I want to see for the next set. I'd love to, obviously, depends where we're going to go, right? I mean, we know we're going to go to another region of Wraith, but I'm sure they'll introduce a new mechanic like they've done for the Elemental, like obviously did the flow in Aria. So here's hoping that we get something new and innovative for whichever area we visit next. But apart from that, give me some new classes, and please don't make them a Runeblade.
Liam, how about you?
Which one?
I think that we're currently in a state where it would be nice if they fleshed out some of the classes that we currently have with talents, like we have seen with Tails, before we add some more classes. It's possible that they would maybe want to rather go wide and then kind of make them all go a bit taller with the kind of their pools. So they might add more classes at this point rather than do more talents again, because they've just done that with Tails. But I think either way, I'd be fairly happy with that. Mainly with if we got kind of a bit more options with people like Dash, where it feels like you're generally playing one of 2 ways, both of which aren't, can't really live up to the flexibility of the class like Runeblade or Guardian, for example, who are more or less able to play on so many different axes just because of the amount of heroes they have available to them, that have so many different card pools themselves. I think it would be nice if they gave us some more fleshed out things, like maybe even like a talented ninja would be cool, or at the very least, if they were to make a new class, something that presented the game to be played in a different way to how we've seen would be nice. I mean, I thought that was the case with Prism, but Prism does it in a way that's probably a bit too frustrating for some people. I think the way Prism was designed is very interesting, and I think it's nice that they are trying to expand on different ways that their kind of game, which in its essence is fairly simple, can be expanded to be very kind of complicated, and like you can really benefit from kind of mastering how the game functions at its core to kind of expand that into the kind of bigger frame of things, like for example with how Prism works, or how you deal with chain, and how you can kind of like the pitch stacking that can happen with any class. All of these things are very interesting mechanics that you could look at, and also there's just things that I might not have even thought about that you could definitely do. So at the very least, I'd like to see more kind of fantasy tropes like they've shown. Like, Alchemist sounds very cool. I'd like to see that as soon as possible. I think, and we all know what Liam H wants as soon as possible.
We've got Potion Shop Bravo. It's pretty much an Alchemist, right?
You're right.
At
yeah.
Potion Shop Starvo, even. I mean,
Yeah. Oh lordy. Go on, Liam. What about you, other Liam? If you say Guardian Boots, you're getting slapped. Okay.
yeah,
I mean, I think the thing that I really want, it kind of leads into that, not the dragon thing. KO's already punched a dragon into oblivion by the look of Ready to Roll. I want to see a balanced meta, but I want to see an interactive one. So, personally, I think Wrath in WTR was probably the most interactive I've seen sets be, because you had Dorinthia, who obviously kind of challenges you. Is this the right thing to block? Is it not? But you've got those decisions. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I'd class it as I've got decisions to make both on my turn and my opponent's. Is it, is blocking this and is this blocking the right idea? Is this hit effect, which I can block because it's not just dominated, the right thing? Can I deal with this on my turn? Whereas, like at the moment, like we said, it feels very much, whether it's a Prism aura board, which I can either pop one aura, end my turn, they play two more, and you're just in this rat race, and you're not really interacting. You're just choosing the pace at which you die. Or Starvo, when you get 5, 6, 7 triggers in a row, where it's like, actually, I might as well block with no cards because I'm going to lose them anyway from a discard effect, which I can't stop. I like those decision points in games, and I think the best games are played are where you either make the right decision and it feels really rewarding as a player, versus even if you get it wrong, I think it's actually quite that learning point going, actually, this is why I thought this and I made this decision. It was the wrong one, but I've had the opportunity to actually choose something else. And that's really what I think is missing at the moment. Like, I think a lot of games just feel predetermined. Like, it doesn't matter what I've done this game. I was always going to lose, or I was always going to win. But Yeah, because I think it's very much that's the high roll factor, but it's the high roll is so consistent that it doesn't it's like you get Starvo turn one with a crippling crush, and then it's a Oakenold, and then it's a even an Autumn's touch, and then Winter's Wail, and you've got a Frostbite. You can choose to defend that, but then you can't swing back, and you just tempo something which is almost it's so hard to get it back now because of the amount of on hit effects. Yeah, I don't think that's something that happens at the moment. I think certain decks once they get the tempo, you're never going to lose it. I think even you don't mind getting Kadachi locked because at what point you're going to stop taking damage and you have to block this because that's coming up. Like Rosetta Thorn is now to some extent, but unless you've got Arcane Barrier 2, and you really want to sacrifice 2 equipment slots for that, unless you're lucky enough to have Visortronic, and even then you're choosing that over Skullcap. So, like I said, I want to be in an interactive meta where I feel like my choices have actually impacted the game. Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's what you want, but you're not encouraging that at the moment. I can't say anything. I've folded to the dark side. Exactly, but yeah, it's why I love Dorinthia, because you get to that stage of I've got 2 cards in hand. You choose to block. Are one of these 2 a reprise or is it not? It's, I always called it Dory Poker, and I loved it. But I mean, that's just my opinion on it. So, is there any other thoughts and hopes for June? And anyone want to hazard a guess at which region it'll be? It's all they said it's a new one. You reckon?
Was
Instant speed. Yeah, and it was it. Who did they replace it? Was it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'd personally, I'd love to see metrics. Obviously, I love Dash. I think the Savage Lands would be really cool because you'll definitely get a new Ranger in that as well. Hashtag Matrix.
I would obviously like to see that, but yeah, to be honest, I think it'd be nice to go to metrics and give mechanologists some more love. Really, like they've had one set outside of supplementaries so far. Just be nice to see them get a little bit as well. They're not that common at the the top of the meta, so be good to see.
Liam?
I'm trying to remember. I would like to see a more fleshed out kind of lore and stuff around the Imperial League, like an army and stuff, the place that Kano's from, and kind of that kind of. They're all seen on. Yeah, is that it? Okay,
yeah.
Then yeah, it'd be great because there's a lot of good, interesting lore from the generic cards and stuff, and their armor looks very cool, but maybe they're not as nice.
Well,
I do like that kind of theme.
You've got Kano there. You've got Kasai's from there.
Oh right,
so, yeah, Kasai's got, as much as she's a warrior, she has the Volcor background, which is that lava-y kind of thing.
Oh sure, yeah.
I'd love to say I'd noticed that in the past, but it's completely passed me by. That one.
That Centauri Cell Source, pesky devil. But I mean, I don't think there's anything else I really want to add for today. So I think we always like to end on Vexing Malice, we like to let someone have a rant for 2 minutes about one thing in Flesh and Blood that's really getting their goat at the moment. And I think, seeing as he's our special guest, the shining star of Manchester, I think, Mr. Canning, over to you. What is your Vexing Malice?
Currently, it's something that you touched on a bit with kind of the Prism Starvo dual decks scenario that we have. It's basically the ebb and flow of Flesh and Blood has kind of been lost as of currently, as we've kind of hit this state where it's a case of hoping to not have to deal with certain cards from your opponent. And if you don't happen to have the answers to those particular cards in your hand at the time, some decks that aren't the two best decks can kind of fall short. Obviously, there are decks that beat each deck in their own respective ways, but because they aren't always going to play against those decks in a tournament, and with the kind of nature of a general tournament, the decks that will always come out ahead statistically will be the decks that are consistently powerful and able to do their things consistently, which is generally Starvo and Prism currently, with maybe a bit of Broomblade in the background, usually. So, with how things are looking, you have Starvo, which is able to consistently, or as consistently as possible, high roll or choose to not high roll, and you don't know which way they're going to go, but you have to kind of take into account that they will always try and kind of roll the dice. So you have to kind of build that into your plan to make sure you don't get pummeled to death. And then you have Prism, which is basically designed in a way that is completely out of the way of any other deck in the game. You have to morph your sideboard for cards that are specifically able to deal with her auras by cheating yourself with action points. You can't give yourself more go again. You have to play cards that specifically alter your ability to gain action points, and some of them also punish you for playing them, like time snaps, because then you get immediately punished by them being able to kind of have that tempo that you had to invest in a later turn, because you've had to use your action point to play the time snap, and if you don't have go again, then you just get mugged off by their 4 or 5 card hand, and then you have to deal with that with the time snap you've played, and then you're back to square one. So I think it's something that is probably quite a bit of a problem, and it's hard to know how that'll be dealt with in the future, because I'm obviously I don't design the game, but I'm hoping that we see more answers in a generic sense that don't require you to skew your deck. That also tends to be quite, most decks have to be synergistic to be able to consistently be powerful now. Any deck that's trying to play like a generic mid-range game just gets crumbled to dust, like Dash, for example, or Rhino. I look at Brute, as I played that yesterday, whenever that was. I didn't feel like I had any kind of semblance of any sort of a kind of game plan, even when my Rhino's generally one of the best heroes at consistently killing auras, and was one of the best matchups for Prism at a point. Now doesn't feel like it nearly has any semblance of a chance, even when you consistently roll for 2 action points, because then you're just using your turn to neutralize the board state, and then they kill you with heralds. So even though I'm a big Prism fan, it does feel like it's somewhat unhealthy for the game for it to be in its current state.
That was an incredibly well thought out and well put together section, to be fair. It makes a real change from me bitching and moaning about the fact that I've got 2 blocks, or Liam, I don't know, or you haven't had one, to be fair, actually. Yeah, no,
I would.
Before James, on the other hand, moaning about how bad Helm of Sharp Eye is. But exactly.
Well, I think
I personally like Helm the Sharp Eye, so
get him off. It's okay in Bolton. I don't
exactly.
Let's not open up this can of worms again.
The real hero.
I've come down from that after being
warrior.
crippling crushed. That's my new beef. But I think going back to your point there, I think the only positive I've seen with that is that we have now seen cards which can, if this hits, break an aura in runic. Is it Runic Reclamation?
Yeah, they are nice.
It's a one-off.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they've just invented Smashing Good Time, thanks to all the ninjas who are now playing that against my Dash deck, you arses, to replace their plunder runs. Yeah, I think.
I'd agree with you. If Runic was a generic card,
Yeah.
then it would be maybe things would be better. I think you get like, it's made some great points to the limb. I think one of the biggest problems right now is it's so hard to tech into both sides of the meta to have any chance, right? Like, your sideboards look very different for Prism than it would for Starvo. I mean, on hits, don't always bother Prism. Starvo taking cards out of the hand is pretty much what you've got to try and do, and then the game plans just vary massively into each one. Like you say, trying to get action points for one and taking cards out of hand for the other makes it so hard to have any other deck to not just immediately crumble to one half, or if not both.
I think it's especially to exacerbate that issue is that you need to draw those cards in a specific point in the game when they are good. Like, unmovable into Starvo isn't necessarily good outside of when you're getting Okanolded, because then it doesn't really feel like you're getting the maximum value of it. And then when you do get Okanolded, you lose so much tempo if you don't have the unmovable, that even if you did get it at some point, it feels like it's a bit too late. Same with Prism, is that if you draw your lead the charges early and they don't have any auras out, and then you have to pitch them because you can't just hold them. Sometimes, obviously, you can hold them in your arsenal and set it up, but when that's not feasible, and you don't have them on handy, and then they've like set up these 2 auras, it's like, oh, what do I do now?
It's like the old snag conundrum when Chain was a bugger, like everyone thinking that they wanted to run snag to stop Riftbind, and it's just like if you're running like 2 of them. And I remember when snag jumps were £15 card. It's like, it's so bad. Why? But it's that thing of if people felt like they need to have the right tool at the right time, and holding it was a stupid thing. Liam, I know you loved snag, really. Yeah, the snag. There was Chains of Eminence that started batting about, people thinking they could hit a Seeds of Agony.
You can name Carrion Husk and then get your free attack in.
It's all right. I'm gonna start bringing it on a Tuesday to play against George and just name Snapshot.
Name Electrify.
Oh, you rude people! Rude people! Are you honestly that scared of this little ranger over here? I mean, come on.
Your face is
it
already
is. Just you thinking about someone naming. I mean, the choice would be Snapshot or Electrify. If you've had to reveal one if you had to reveal Electrify to fuse, just go, yeah, I'll name that.
Hope you're all terrible people. I'll just kill you next turn. It's fine.
We'll have 17 and a half auras by then. But yeah. Well, thank you very much, chaps. I know we've gone a little bit over, but Liam, thank you very much for joining us. And
it was a pleasure.
Thank
you very much.
Very well run event on Saturday.
I'll try. Just for you.
With our little, is there a Blitz event for all?
Yes, we'll be doing a side event of Blitz for all of those poor unfortunate souls that don't manage to have a record that can top 8 after the 4th round.
Awesome.
So we'll have some nice prizes for that, especially a Lord of Wind playmat.
Ooh. That's a little. I have to make sure I get the editing done on this quick so that people can listen and make sure they bring a Blitz deck with them.
Absolutely.
All those Starvos going, it's fine, I'll just cut my Blitz deck down and oh no. Hang on a minute.
Scribble out the adult. Give him try and rub out his mustache.
Look, he can't be an adult. He's not got a tash anymore. And I think on that bombshell, I think it's about time we finished. Thank you very much, folks. And to anyone who's still around, thank you very much for listening.